Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time zone it is, wherever you in the world, it is your Lawrence Xavier, and we are going to be doing something very different for the channel's usual brand and themes, but it is going to be about World of Darkness all the same. This might confuse some of you. Well, next to me I have two books. One's an iconic RPG and one of them's probably going to be iconic in the near future. The near dark future. You see what I did there, Chumba. Now, we have Cyberpunk, the classic role-playing game of the dark future. Cyberpunk 2020, published and developed by Telsorian Games. And this is the second reprint because you may know they changed and updated some of the rules, yada yada yada. And we have Cyberpunk RED, the role-playing game of the dark future, published and developed by Telsorian Games, which serves as the bridge between 2020 and the video game 2077 and the anime Edge Runners and the music video, the name of the song I forget the name of, and also the upcoming Sourcebook that will bring in 2077 elements, which is really exciting. But enough about, Cyberpunk in its entirety. We're going to bridge Vampire the Masquerade and Cyberpunk together. And some of you may know what I'm going to talk about now, but some of you are very confused. Well, White Wolf Publishing, who are the original developers and publishers of the World of Darkness games, so Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf, Mage, Wraith, Changeling, Hunter, Demon, Orpheus, and all the other themes that I care not to mention at this point, they released a series of magazines. It's actually how it started out at the very early beginnings, in addition to, developing their games, but the magazine came first. And we're not going to talk about the history of the magazine, because quite frankly, I don't care. But we're going to be focusing on 3 issues. Issue 36, 37, and 38. Because those 3 have sections talking about a crossover between Cyberpunk 20 and Vampire the Masquerade, 2nd edition specifically, guessing by the year that those particular magazines were put out. The World of Future Darkness, the very interesting crossover between Cyberpunk and Vampire the Masquerade. I've seen this being mentioned quite a bit. Like, you talk about Cyberpunk in a World of Darkness group, or vice versa, there's always going to be that one person that talks about, like, the weird crossover, or people who are looking, like, for ways to spice up their games, or you ask somebody, like, oh, how does Cyberpunk affect vampires, like that sort of thing? How would you run that in a dark future sort of setting? And there's somebody that mentions, well, there was this homebrew that mentioned, or sorry, this the Sourcebook that they put out that talks about it, but nobody ever seems to mention where they come from, other than it exists somewhere and just leaves people to do their own research, which, on the one hand, I'm all fine for people doing that actual research. But, at the same time, it's not particularly great from an archive sort of point of view. Like, what's the whole point of mentioning that it exists but not telling you where the source comes from? And that's where I'm going to come in, because we're going to be talking about most of these installments. Because, as I said, the 3 different magazines have 3 different installments talking about this crossover setting. And then I'm also going to leave links in the description below for you to purchase those 3 magazines if, one, you're interested in a blast from the past, with the different reviews and whatnot and other articles that are in there. But also if you want to try and integrate Cyberpunk into your games of Vampire the Masquerade, and of course integrate Vampire the Masquerade into your games of Cyberpunk. You purchase it with those links, I get some of the money back, as I'm an affiliate at Drive-Thru RPG and the Storyteller's Vault, which allows me to do additional content like this. If it wasn't for your support, I wouldn't have got this book, 2020, so if you want more interesting content like that, consider doing that, as well as some additional books in the description below. So what do each of these magazines cover? Well, specifically the Cyberpunk and the Vampire the Masquerade crossover, the World of Future Darkness, as it's so called. Well, the first issue is like the main bulk of the Cyberpunk Vampire crossover. It has the rules, the settings, like all the crunch and character creation stuff that you'll need, in addition to a new clan, which we will explore in full detail. The second installment, pun not intended, talks about how you actually run Chronicles of Vampire the Masquerade in Night City. It's not like a Night City extension, but like taking the things of Vampire and crossing them over with Night City, adapting and changing the themes to suit your Chronicles in a cyberpunk setting. And the third installment is not actually one that we're going to be covering here, but I'll talk about it anyway here. This has a story that you can run with your players if you want to put Kindred in Night City. And the reason why I'm not going to be talking about that is because I feel that I start talking about that in this sort of setting where I'm just like reading and like giving my like knee-jerk reaction thoughts. It's not very helpful, at least to how I do things anyway. I'd much rather give a full fat review for something like that, because I do book reviews, you know. I'll put a whole playlist up there in a corner somewhere to check out, for you to check out. So if you want me to do a review of this, like a proper review of the story thing, give me those likes and comments in the description below, and I'm going to need a lot of those to convince me to do that. And I'll, you know, make some time to do that once the 3-part installment is out. What do I mean by that? Because this is going to be a 3-part series. The first series, is part of this series, is going to be talking about, you know, the meat and potatoes, the crunch, the character creation, and how Kindred and the World of Darkness Denzians fit into Cyberpunk's Night City according to this non-canon, I should make that very clear, this is not canon, crossover. The second episode is going to be talking about, you know, this chronicle element of it, like talking about the themes and discussing about how the themes from Cyberpunk cross over with Vampire the Masquerade and vice versa. And the third series, I'm actually going to do a bit of solo roleplay where I'm going to make a character using Vampire the Masquerade, and we're going to have a bit of combat, you know, and test out these different mechanics to see how well they stand up. Because I think that just to really see how all the gears, or the cyberware, as it were, you know, works in an actual game setting. Because I have my opinions from reading it, but, you know, it's one thing to read it and have thoughts on it, but then actually to try it out. To that end, I should mention I will be using Vampire the Masquerade's 20th Anniversary Edition to do that. It's the closest to 2nd edition of Vampire. Like, there's very little modifications I'll need to make with that. 5th edition, not happening. I don't have any beef with 5th edition, it's just there are too many changes to make that work well. And also, we'll be able to see how well this will be able to hold up using a later edition of Vampire, just to see how well it stands the test of time sort of thing. So that's going to be lots of fun. So without further ado, let's chip in, Chumbers, and let's see what the first installment of this World of Future Darkness installment has to offer. And here we are, me teeny tiny up in the corner, and so we can have a proper look at this PDF here. An officially purchased one, I have to say. Not that it's particularly expensive, but I've got these legitimately so I can give you the most authentic experience here. And before we have a proper look, this does feel, by looking at it, a decent, like, Vampire the Masquerade. It looks like an official product. Like, you've got the frames round the corner, the borders rather, you've got the right font and things, that classic, you know, legacy Vampire font. The artwork's very cartoony of the period as well. Like, that's just, like, overly gruesome, but it's very appropriate as well. You know, you got the vampire head there. Clearly got some, like, cybernetic stuff going on. It all looks and feels like the World of Darkness. You've got, like, a little ad there. And I believe that's the last page. Oh, no, there's one more page. You've got some recurring artwork at the bottom. I think the artwork looks very cool. It's very appropriate of the setting as well. And we'll explore all this in good detail. And, you know, okay, so that's the last page. So it's about 7 pages, give or take. So it's not a huge installment talking about, like, the general world and setting. But then again, I don't think you want them to step over each other's toes as much. So let's have a little read through and see what we can learn. Cyberpunk and Gothic punk are a natural crossbreed. The vampire naturally slips into the mean streets of 2020 with a vengeance. There are many themes that are common in both games: humanity and the loss of it, alienation and a feeling of fighting the inevitable. This, I feel, is very true. You know, with Cyberpunk, you are, like, at the bottom and you're, like, trying to fight against the corporations, those corrupt corporations such as, like, Arasaka and Militech and Petrochem, you know, all those other major world-dominating corporations in the 2020 universe. You know, the governments there don't have much of an influence there, or at least not as much as they would like. And sometimes you have to work with them. You use their, like, weapons and their armors and things, like, so you can survive, but, you know, you'd much rather see the whole lot fucking burn down. And in the World of Darkness, you are neonates of the Camarilla or the Anarchs fighting against your suppressive elders, and how they secretly rule the world sort of thing. So I do agree with that in this same sense, how there's that cross-pollination, as they were. And also the discussion of humanity. I'd say it's different. Obviously, with Cyberpunk, the concept is that you modify and change who you are. You detract from yourself from humanity as you've got like more metal or chrome in you sort of thing. Of course, there are some other allegories that I could mention here. It's a bit yikes, that you're changing to suit yourself, to feel more you. That you could probably read between the lines of what I'm trying to say here. But it's more the things like, oh, you're just changing yourself for the sake of it so you can become a killing machine. It's that element that Cyberpunk focuses on really well. Then anyway, let's carry on. Is there really much difference between a netrunner, a pair of solos, and a medtech out to make money, and the flout, the corporation and group of anarchs attempting to destroy the establishment? The times are changing. In the old days, you only had to worry about the other kindred and the occasional ambitious witch hunter. Now, you not only have the elders and anarchs hunting you out for blood, but you also have megacorps and edge runners to worry about. With the addition of cybernetics, the humans are no longer the pushovers they've been over the centuries. Technological and advances are now being placed in the body, providing many humans with the abilities to match kindred in physical combat. Modern weaponry has reached a peak. A kindred with 5 dice in firearms and a perception of 5, by the way, if anybody has that in my game, like I'm getting them to redo their character sheet, will not stand up well to a cyberpunk with 5 dice of firearms, perception, and a smart gun link. Smart gun link, for those who don't know, basically you put a little cable in from your head or your arm or whatever into a gun, and it just improves your aiming with it. It's sort of like you're connecting with the mechanisms of the gun, so to speak. As if all this wasn't bad enough, many of the youngest anarchs were embraced with cyberware. They have not only disciplines, but also the cybernetic boots. Who wants to meet a pissed-off Brujar solo with reflex boosts, muscle and bone lace, a smart gun link, and potence, and celerity in a dark combat zone alley? Yeah, that sounds fucking broken. As particularly with how Cyberpunk 2020's combat is. That's infamously lethal, and I love it. But World of Darkness, especially with older stuff, with potence and celerity and how that works and how that adds dice to everything that you do, yeah, that's going to be game over very quickly. On the other hand, Cyber won't stop dominate, which is, very true. So it then talks about the Masquerade and society, vampire society in Cyberpunk 2020. And I'm not going to go through everything because, I want you to experience this all by yourself. There's a mention of the inner circle there and how that sort of like you crosses over and whatnot, but I think it's going to be interesting for most people to talk about what the different clans were like, or at least the clans that were introduced in 2nd edition. So let's have a look at those. The Assamites, which 5th edition players will know as the Banu Hakim. The Assamites have more business now than they ever had in centuries. Many possess contacts with megacorps. This is, in fact, the major source of monetary income. On the other hand, with the constant increase of terrorists between the elders and the anarchs, there is rich business to be held for elder veto. Which I think is a very interesting turn, how they've become far more corporate, as it were. But, to survive the times, the hunter has to adapt to what the prey adapts to, I guess. The Brujar. The modern world has even more place for the rebels than the last 20th century. Iconoclasts, or however that word is pronounced, are leading street gangs and a few at the cutting edge of music. You won't find them on major labels, however. The idealists are losing support for their tactics. With the world changing so fast, the iconoclasts, or however that word's pronounced, insist there is no time to plan ahead so far. The individualists are gaining the most ground. Most of them can be found in music or street ops, although a few could be found pulling the strings on the few corps they could get into without attracting Venture or Giovanni interest. Which as a write-up, as awfully as I read that, so hopefully you're reading along with me, I do think that covers a very interesting spread of the Brujar. It doesn't just focus on the Brujar being like punk rebels, like fighting against the man sort of thing. It also touches upon their more political side and their, to a very minor extent, their philosophical means. It's touching a bit more on the lore and the setting a bit more, so it provides a bit more of a contrast there, which I kind of like. The followers of Set are rising rapidly. The clan's wares are bought and sold nearly everywhere. In fact, some pride themselves on purchasing these items or services. Many can be found dealing the latest and greatest in designer drugs, running the nastier gangs, and otherwise being frustratingly annoying, but always being behind the scenes and in the shadows. Which, this is very much the same sort of thing that the followers of Set are doing across all editions of Vampire. There's some changes in 5th edition, some very interesting ones, but this doesn't provide much of an interest to me as a storyteller or as a player to, like, what can I do differently that I'm not doing in a more grounded game of Vampire the Masquerade. Then we have the Gangrel. Travel's become more difficult in the last 30 years. Most Gangrel find nomad family to run with, occasionally the Ravnos' caravans. The Ravnos clearly having still those Romani ties, because that was something that World of Darkness was doing here. Unfortunately, they tried to gel them with those sorts of families, which is... I don't need to go into that, but they did not do that particularly well. If they run with a human pack, they don't do it for so very long. The city they stay to themselves, maintaining their loner image, often becoming solos or medics, which isn't too dissimilar, but it's interesting that puts like the Gangrel in almost like on the verge of extinction sort of mentality. Because Night City doesn't exactly know for its green, luscious spaces, and Night City, the area surrounding it is just like desert. Like it's not particularly ideal for them to survive, and so having to, you know, as I said earlier on with the Assamites, the hunter has to become the hunted sort of thing. Then we have the Giovanni. This clan still continues to operate from the family stronghold in Venice, reaching out to gain control as much as the wealth they can manage to grab. In the last few decades, they've come in indirect conflict with the Ventrue numerous times, the Cameron beginning to see them as a greater danger than ever before as their plan blooms. So there's a bit of unrest there, because you know the Giovanni and the Ventrue of the Camarilla don't exactly interact with each other's politics, but that seems to be breaking down here. Which, the promise of 1528, which is sort of bringing to limelight in the 5th edition setting, it was there in older editions of Vampire. You know, rather than getting too deep in it, it's interesting to see that these two go at it all the same. But that said, there isn't that much different here, and, you know, I would have been interested in a bit more of a conversation about how they deal with ghosts or spirits, as it's you see on the opposite page. Then we have the Malkavians. Members of this clan still congregate where madness and sanity are common. Naturally, this means they could be anywhere in most modern American cities. So yeah, typical legacy Malkavian. I say legacy stuff, but then again, 5th edition doesn't exactly treat the Malkavians with sense, you know. Yeah. The Nosferatu, my personal favourite clan. The Nosferatu remain separated from mortal and kindred society for the most part. Although their information network has expanded to even greater levels, members of this clan are likely to know anything about anyone. Again, same Nosferatu stuff, but the distinction between keeping away from kindred and mortals, I feel, is a little interesting here. You know, and in the days of the internet and network and like corporate wars and things happening online and net running, I imagine the Nosferatu are particularly very good net runners. You know, it'd be interesting to see what they would do with ShrekNet in that scenario, which of course you can explore in your own cyberpunk vampire settings, Vampire the Cyberpunk, or Cybervamp as it were. Then we have the Ravnos. The American members of this clan travel about as nomads, wandering from city to city, trying to find what enjoyment they can in their particular form of unlife. So pretty nothing here. At least it doesn't harpen on too much, and they're more those elements. The Toreador, at least not specifically mentioning cultures and whatnot and being total tits about it. So the Toreador continues to be a powerful influence in the Camarilla. Several influential Toreador own several entertainment corps specialising in every medium available in the world of 2020, which Doesn't surprise me. It's interesting that they control corporations a bit more forwardly, or at least as forward as this book's prepared to make it. Now, here's the Tremere. Many of the Tremere have puppets in the middle to upper of several corps, including those controlled by the Venture and Giovanni. The Tremere are all interested in gaining influence in the mortal world, and the balance of power is shifting from the national governments to mega corporations. During the last pilgrimage to Transylvania to meet with the Tremere, it was noticed that he was behaving strangely, which I like that little seed of a plot point. Doesn't mention much to do with blood sorcery here, more the element of control, and it'll be interesting to see how that would change in a cyberpunk setting, like the importance of their thaumaturgy here. And it'll be interesting to see what Tremere would look like in this setting, which again, you can explore in your settings of cyberpunk. The Ventru possess much influence since many of the more powerful shareholders in many corporations are in their pockets. Money, favours, dominate, and blood bonds ensure their status in the human world. Ever wonder why cybernetics are unpopular in Europe? The caitiff, and the caitiff, for those who are unaware, are those that are without a clan. Partly a social theme, but more so that there's something gone wrong with the blood-based genetic makeup, so they don't exhibit some of the weaknesses and the things that tie the clans together, so they have different disciplines, like it could be any match, or at least any match that the storyteller allows. They don't have their weaknesses, they don't have their strengths, so to speak. They're the Build-A-Bear vampire option. In a time where individuality is becoming a rare resource, the caitiff have become even more difficult keeping theirs. Many are currently found in gangs or simply trying to survive on their own or in small groups. Quite a few have joined the Anarchs or Sabbat packs in the last few years, so pretty much the same as older stuff, but it's interesting that it focuses a bit more on their lack of individuality, which in sense, them being different from the other clans makes them rather individual. I actually did a roleplay guide on how to portray the caitiff in an interesting way, which you can check out in a card that's going to pop up in the corner there. You probably might not be able to see me point up there, but it's up there somewhere. Anywho, then we have the Inconnu and the Sabbat, which you can read at your own leisure. And then we have other groups like the Magi, the Mummy, Spirits, which I'll just touch upon because I mentioned it a moment ago with the Giovanni. Stories about ghosts haunting mainframes, while not common, are being circulated through the net, which is very interesting to see. Because there is an element of Wraith the Oblivion lore where it is the Artificers Guild with their inhabit, which again I'll leave a lore dive up there. Very interesting stuff, I do have to say, where some of the younger members of the guild are able to using technology to their advantage and possibly traversing through telephone wires and whatnot at really fast speeds, the speed of sound or light, as it were. Speed of sound, the speed of light. That's faster. And it'd be interesting to see how ghosts would interact in this sense, particularly in Wraith the Oblivion terms. Do they come up into how do they interact with viruses? Are they becoming viruses themselves? Very interesting stuff. And how would corporations employ these sorts of things? Because I don't think that they would remain completely incognito, as it were. Then we've got a bit on Vampire Hunters, the Society of Leopold, which you can read about in your own leisure. But then we have the new vampire clan, the Cyberpunks, which I think is such a lazy. Because you play as Cyberpunks in the default game, so whether you're a vampire or not, you are a Cyberpunk or an Edge Runner. So it would have been nice if they gave it a bit more of an interesting name rather than just being called Cyberpunks, but there you go. That is what we've got. But of course, you as the storyteller, if you want to come up with a more interesting name yourself, you go for it. So the Cyberpunks is basically these are a bloodline that have managed to incorporate net running, blood sorcery, and cyberware to control and do all that stuff, I guess. So I like the fact they've included this, but I think it's just a bit sloppy. Technica is their unique discipline that allows them to do this. Technica is the cyberpunk's special relationship with technology. With this power, they can understand machines much more fully, or even with them, an absolute necessity in the modern world. I'll just say now that took me quite a few takes to do, because I think that's a bit sloppily written in of itself, and also the fonts quality isn't particularly fantastic, which is like a main criticism with the PDFs, I have to say. So yeah, you've got 6 levels rather than the usual 5, with level 1 being this ability allows the Kindred to interface with any place of equipment designed for that she can touch sanguineous determinist vehicles, cyberdecks. A touch on the device or on an interface cord is all that is necessary. However, the touch must be maintained if contact is lost or control is lost. And right at the end with level 6, we have the cyberpunk can send her life force into a machine inhabiting it. She has an absolute control over the device. Her body, however, is motionless if in torpor, so essentially a vampiric netrunning sort of thing. And the character will be unaware of what is occurring around her body unless she is near death, or the machine has a sensor that can monitor it. She can only leave the machine to re-enter her body or enter another machine. There are no cyberpunks above 7th generation, which is an interesting note there. So when I say that it's like net running, you may be aware this is Cyberpunk 2020 is obviously a game that was designed in the late 80s and early 90s. So if you think about those classic films like Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell, Johnny Matrix, Terminator, Robocop, like that sort of like tech is really important, corporation sort of thing, big and clunky sort of thing. I'm a bit ashamed it's taken me this long into this part to talk about the setting of Cyberpunk itself, but that's what we're doing now, I guess. So it's not all like slim and sleek, like technology is big and bulky and net running and surfing the web had a bit of like enjoyable cheese to it. And with net running, you like plug yourself into the computer. In 2020, you have like a cyberdeck sort of thing that you sort of like hold on to or like have on your person. You chip yourself into that goes into the machine, and your whole like subconsciousness is filled with like the metaverse. Back when the metaverse wasn't just cringe associated with tech bros and money laundering scams and all that shit. So you're able to surf the web, travel across the world as your body remains in place. Torpid, one could say. It's interesting to see how that's all working, and you can go through the different discipline powers if you haven't read these already on the screen and use them properly in your own game. And of course we then have cyberware, and we're just going to focus specifically on that big question on cyberware in kindred bodies. Cyberware will generally be present in those canons who were embraced within the last 15 years. Most people in the modern world have, at the minimum, a pair of interface plugs and a neural-aware processor. Interface plugs allows you to like to plug in to different machines and whatnot, but for neural-aware processors you can read Cyberpunk 2020 to find out. These guidelines are written with the assumption that the cybernetic implants will work in a vampiric body. If you wish Elder Kindred to be capable of getting cyberware, here is a little ritual we cooked up. Note that this could only be found at the very best of clinics, because it's like Ripper Doc clinic sort of things, and medical clinics is how this is done officially. With such those described in Eurosource, which is a source book for Cyberpunk 2020. A K-Knight with contact level 4 or 5 knows someone who could get into such a clinic. And then you have a ritual that gives you a description about how elders are able to do that, because cyberware doesn't exactly work very well with the undead flesh. So let's go back and talk about the cyberware in itself. Cyberware is what makes the genre different. You don't play Cyberpunk just to shoot people. You play Cyberpunk to shoot people with your smart chipped Minimami 10 submachine gun and shoot first with your Koresenkov reflex boosts. Meat doesn't cut it on the streets, chumba. If you have the euro, because the currency is euro bucks, buy the toys. It will save you you'll save your worthless butt someday. I can read. Besides, the chrome looks to the cryo. One of the ideas that Vampire the Masquerade and Cyberpunk 2020 have in common is the concept of diminishing humanity. In Vampire, you can lose it in various heinous acts. In Cyberpunk, you lose humanity to cyberware. Humanity due to frenzies, and with Rorschach, with the advent of cyberware and its effect on the psyche, the flame of humanitas burns even lower, the beast edging closer to the surface. Yes, a vampire becomes more powerful than other vampires, let alone solos with these devices, but think of the price. Humanity cost works much as it does in Cyberpunk 2020. The primary difference is that it works against humanity in Cyberphone. Which is what they've called this now, apparently. Both empathy from Cyberpunk and humanity from the storyteller system are based on the 0 to 10 range. Don't forget to multiply your base humanity by 10 to get your humanity humanity index. If a guru has cyberware, Luna knows why. It would prevent change. Use Gnosis instead. If a mummy, use Barb, and so on and so forth. For those who don't wish to add a 6-sided dice in the Vampire Chronicles, because Cyberpunk uses a D10 and D6, you can determine how many 10-sided dice to roll for the loss by adding the total number of D6s, multiplying by 3 and dividing by 5, keeping the remainder as a plus. Example, Eric has 9d6 loss from cyberware. He multiplies 9 by 3, getting 27, then divides by 5, getting 5, 4, or 5 with a remainder of 2. He rolls 5d10 plus 2 to determine the cost. Do not add fixed cost items into this total, which is an attempt to make the system work properly, yes, but it's a very clunky one. I'm not a fan of it, to be totally honest. That's like the main thing that's making me a bit about it. So yeah, that's just generally how it works, and you'll find later on that vampires generally don't do cyberware post-embrace, as you've kind of gathered from there. Like, you kind of need to be embraced with it and not make those changes. So cyberware and disciplines, and there's a bit here that talks about how that works, which I think is a very interesting thing. Fortitude and potence, vampires in the net, starting cyberware. Starting cyberware. Talks about the resources, like the conversion over there. The cyberware list. If a piece of cyberware is not mentioned, assume no change from Cyberpunk. Most of the cyberware from Cyberpunk 2020, Interface Magazine, Chrome 1 and Chromebook are listed here. You can actually buy the Chromebooks as a bundle now, as both as PDF and print on demand on Drive-Thru-RPG. Again, link in the description below. So you can buy them as one book. I'm actually going to leave quite a few Cyberpunk books for you to go and check things out. Again, using those special affiliate links so I get some of the money back. You've got some implants and some conversions, like Krezenkov fashion wear gives you a +1 celerity level, 1 dexterity at level 2, +3 celerity speed wear. I'm not going to go through each one bit by bit, but it gives you the idea of how to convert, those staple cyberpunk themes into Vampire the Masquerade, which we will be doing in that third and final installment. We do a little bit of combat. I'm not entirely too sure what TN means here. I'm assuming that's technology, but I can work that out at a later point. So basically, that's the remainder of the home. I'm calling it homebrew, but it's not. It gives you a general list of cyberware, limbs, and whatnot, and how that does. Like cyber arm, 4 damage boxes, 4 soak dice. Where some of my favourite weapons, cyber weapons. Here we go. We've got the Wolvers. Damage does strength +3. So pretty meaty stuff. Some of these have got asterisks next to them. If a kindred had this before the embrace, it no longer works. If a kindred possesses this, he is considered to have a normal heartbeat. A kindred with this only needs to be staked through 1 pump, which I'm presuming 1,000 bits and pieces and whatnot. And that's the first part of our Cybervamp 3-part series, where we had a look at the general setting of the Cyberpunk and Vampire the Masquerade crossover, the world of future darkness, or Cyberfang as they call it. But I think Cybervamp is better, but then again, I am biased. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, or whatever time zone it is, wherever you in the world, it is your Lord and Saviour, with the second out of 3 parts of the exploration of the world of future darkness, my Cybervamp series. Now what is it? Well, you can check out a fuller description of all of that in the first part of this, which is going to appear on the card up there, or check out the playlist at the end of the video. You had a strange collaboration between the material found in Cyberpunk 2020. Lovely stuff. And Vampire the Masquerade of the World of Darkness. Combining the two together, we get the World of Future Darkness. The first part explored what it is and how the clans and whatnot operate in Cyberpunk's 2020, and this part's going to be focusing on the themes and storytelling, as well as some exciting NPCs that you can add to your game. And in the third part, we're going to be doing some combat, which, as I said in the first part, we'll be using Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition, because the homebrew write-up thing was written with 2nd edition in mind, I'm guessing, given the year that it came out, and as I do not have that, I'm using the closest thing to hand, which just so happened to be, in my hand, Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition. Lovely stuff. And without further ado, I think we should just get straight into this rather disappointingly short chronicle write-up thing. So, if we just transition over with these fancy effects that I've just done, wowzers, I'm actually using OBS as it was intended. You can see that once more we have a fairly inconsistent quality. You've got the nice border things around the edges, you've got the classic 2nd edition sort of style illustrations, a lot more varied than what you would find with Vampire, usually. You've got some ads there, more NPCs, and then it goes on to the next thing. And we're just going to go back to the beginning and have a look at this write-up and have a bit of a conversation and see Chronicles in Night City. Probably going to skip bits as well because I want you to read this at your own time. And also, as you can probably see, the print is not fantastic, unfortunately. The scan, I should say. The scan is not fantastic. So we're going to be tripping up on some words here, so cope. Because I'm going to have to endure. Night City is a natural location for a chronicle, which, for the cyberpunk enthusiast, is like the de facto city. Like, everything revolves around this city in this universe. The city has it all: wealth, power, corruption, poverty, and desperation. The system of haves and have-nots have become so entrenched that those outside are simultaneously at an advantage and at a disadvantage. For those inside the system, everything comes easy. Everything comes easy. The companies sponsor their employees from the cradle to the grave. Medical care, housing and transportation are all available from the corporations, of course, a very classic cyberpunk theme. For those on the outside, it's much rougher. Boosters are everywhere, which are gangs that are basically up to their fucking titties in cyberware and whatnot. It's difficult to walk around the street without being a witness or a victim to crime. Walking across the city can be a story in of itself, onto itself. As it described there, Night City is an incredibly violent city. There's actually, in the south, a whole part of the city called the Combat Zone, which is completely lawless, where just crime happens all the time. And in fact, in the Night City Sourcebook, which is up there somewhere, my copy at least is up there, it's not like the only one that's up there, but in the Night City Sourcebook, it goes through in great detail like every single part of the city until it gets to the Combat Zone, where it basically goes, do whatever the fuck you want, here's some encounters, which really highlights in a very simple way just how screwed up it is when you can plug into data terms and whatnot and like research and like scan for anything that you want, but it doesn't have anything on anything that constitutes in the Combat Zone. It's kind of frightening at the same time. The advantage comes from the skills of those from the outside. The Cyberpunk or Edge Runner, which is a synonym, possess many abilities that the corps can use. Even better, those resources don't have any official connection to them. They hire those people for pittance and send them on their jobs. If they don't come back, plausible them on their jobs. Plausible on them jobs? Whatever. If they don't come back, plausible deniability is the standard way of looking at things. As I said, awful print and I'm getting confused. The division between the Anarchs and the camera is extremely marked in this city. There is a physical separation between downtown and the Combat Zone. Edge running is quite a valid occupation for the young Anarchs, which kind of gears toward what the de facto World of Future Darkness game will entail. And I've just noticed, in the previous thing, the World of Future Darkness was a alright colour, but now we've just got the black and white here, which is an interesting contrast, a little disappointing. So, the general theme, mood, background, and history, the first two in particular are going to be your main ports of calls here. The overall theme for such a chronicle should be including three basic concepts. Life is fast, the world is moving at hypersonic speeds. The kindred and kind both have difficulty keeping up, let alone staying on the edge. If you think they have had too much to breathe freely, drop something on them. Don't let them slow down on enough to think, which makes sense, you know, especially with the bit on the Combat Zone I just mentioned. It's like hitting you all the time, like very little time for rest, especially for vampires and Anarchs who are constantly, you know, on the move. They're doing things and just, it's more of a case of like kill and be killed. sort of mentality in the city as a mortal, and I suspect as a vampire that's quite a lot extra to deal with as well, especially at night, especially if you're in the combat zone and for whatever reason you decide to hunker down for the day and like somebody comes up and like fucks about with you in one way or another. So an added level of fear that not many people would have to think about. Life is lonely. The characters have only themselves and said friends to rely on. The elders don't care if they live or die as long as the masquerade stays in place. The corpse don't care, just don't leave any evidence leading back to them. If anyone doesn't notice you, it's probably because they are an easy profit. They could be anything from a spare organ or cyber parts to the bounty on your head, which is very true. I have to say this is presented very simplistically, because I'm assuming that this was written for World of Darkness fans who had the idea of like, oh, what would vampire be like in the future? And it obviously uses the cyberpunk mentality to push that forward, because as we discussed previously, it's a very natural fit between the two of them. And it'd be nice if it could have been expanded a bit more here, but then again, if you want more information about that, just fucking buy the Cyberpunk book and any of its source materials, or watch any film of the cyberpunk genre. But it's a decent intro, but it would be nice just to have a bit more variety, something that makes it a bit more vampiric rather than generic. That said, it is good if it's like your first introduction into the cyberpunk genre, so you know, it has its pros and cons. And the third thing, life is cheap. The players must feel as if the only value their lives have is what they attach to it. Which, yeah, if it's not on your back, like, it's a free game. If it's not with your friends, fellow edge runners, then, you know, you're all in this to get... Sorry. Background. There's an excellent sourcebook for Night City published by, naturally, Altos Games. This background will give you an idea how to integrate the maneuvers of the Kindred into the game. Which, I have to say, is disappointing. It doesn't say what the book is, though. I mean, I've just told you, but it doesn't take long for anybody to Google Sourcebook for Night City, but it would have been nice if that was expanded a bit more, to be honest. And we've just skipped a whole section. Mood. Chaos reigns. Events occur constantly, sometimes for no apparent reason. Play up the unpredictability and problems of the city in 2020. Remember, this is the future, and it ain't pretty. Every chance you get, show the players the darker side of the city. The latest Voodoo Boy killing, the Voodoo Boy being a gang in Night City. You may recognise it, actually, if you've played Cyberpunk 2077, or 2077 to be more hip with it. God, that is the whitest thing I have done. Glossing over that. So 2077 has the Voodoo Boys as like a proper Haitian gang that are like connecting their voodoo and voodoo beliefs and etc. with net running. In 2020, they're a bunch of stuck-up middle-class white boys appropriating their culture that are supposed to be hated and despised. And this has been addressed. I believe there was a slight controversy that was over this. And they were meant to be, like, hateable and, like, people were supposed to scold them for their behaviour sort of thing. So, yeah, take that what you will, you know, you can give and take sort of thing. The last hostile takeover or the occasional gunfight, which takes place every 10 minutes if you live in the combat zone, as I discussed a moment ago. These are desperate times. The world is ending and humanity is plunging the earth into a mere pollution of destruction. What can a few people do, especially when they're having a hard time just surviving, which is a very good point to highlight. First of all, you've got Vampire with the whole Gehenna apocalypse theme, which you can integrate however you please. And also, it's a very dystopian theme, Cyberpunk. Like the motto of low life, high tech. It's very much the emphasis on the genre is what makes it stand out more from sci-fi, where it's like super rich, like exploring the space and galaxy sort of thing. Sure, Cyberpunk 2020, 45 and 77 does have like a space element to it, but it's more like there's some space stations and satellites that just orbit the Earth that are like corporations like fighting each other, like a whole space war thing that's going on. And the idea that it's all... You're not superheroes, you're not trying to save the world, you're trying to save your own personal world. You know, fighting against your own fight against corporations that, quite frankly, you're never going to win, but it's just you're surviving, you're just trying to get through the next day or night, as if you are a vampire. So let's talk about the history a bit. When Richard's Night project began attracting corporate attention and funding, It also gained the attention of some of the few kindred. Several of those involved felt that could work. They would have a city free of anarch troubles and other similar difficulties. Richard Knight is the one who created Night City, and as this book may explore, he was killed by the Mafia, essentially. The Venture and Giovanni were the primary movers behind several of the megacorps, although the Tremere were not far behind. The Toreadors spotted the possibility of a new artistic community. Many of them moved in, and there's a bit more of their write-ups here, which again you can check up the first part of that to learn more. By 1995, Knight was secured by the Giovanni clan and became one of their ghouls. Sorry, I stopped then. I haven't read this before. I actually went into this as a surprise sort of thing. I feel like an honest reaction sort of thing. And I hate this thing of, like, nothing big can happen in the world of darkness if it's not pushed forward by a vampire, werewolf, or whatever. Given what I just said about the Mafia, it kind of makes sense about how things went wrong if I'm going in this thinking of the way it's going to go in, but God, that's frustrating. The Venture soon discovered this and began financing attempts on his life to remove him in 1998. The Assamite succeeded, so many others failed. Okay, so this was actually an Assamite thing. Wow, that was overly convoluted. It would have been nice if it was just like the humans just did the human things, but, you know, Vampire, the Jihad, the big chess game that they're all playing. I mean, it's interesting that I just wanted them to... I just had to go with not wanting to expand it a bit more, and I'm now criticising them for expanding it more. You're expanding it wrong, in my personal opinion. It's weird that it would have been nice if, like, the mood and the background of the city had more of a vampire feel, but not to the point where Night City came about because of vampire manipulation. Anyway, over the next 7 years, the struggles for power were chaotic as various Canaanites manoeuvred their pawns into position. Some had only had them die, others lost them to the opposing clans, as if they were not enough. Several anarchs moved in to take advantage of the prime new feeding grounds. At the end of this period, the mob and their kindred leader, the Bruja... What the fuck does that say? Cosneggiore Gurdai Salvatore, effectively ruled Night City. Crime escalated. The Sabbat even made an attempt to gain control during this time and failed miserably against the organisation of the Mafia. Interesting that the Sabbat, the vampires, were unable to have some pushback against the Mafia, implying that the Giovanni influence is particularly strong in Night City, or at least it was at this point. After 4 years of kindred and mortal violence, the Venture and the Giovanni moved in and destroyed the mob's power base. Okay. So the Camarilla and Giovanni succeeded where the Sabbat failed. But the Giovanni control the mob. So it's quite interesting to see them have that influence. I feel this is feeling a little rushed to me at this point. Make no mistake, the two clans had no intention to cement an alliance. They were simply responding to what they considered to be an untenable situation. Guido Salvatore was slain in his haven by a squad of highly trained ghouls sent by Carlo Giovanni. Since that time, no Canaanite has moved in to take control of the mob, although Don Cavarali, or however that name's pronounced, is probably planning some special surprise for the near future. Plot hooks for you to use, I'm sure. At the end of the war, the corporations cooperated in setting up a city government. The Venture set up a mayor, and the Giovanni, by their own agreement, did not interfere openly, which is referring, more openly than the previous thing, the promise of 1528, which I like. You know, some of that vampire integration there, which that's the sort of thing that I wanted. It was a bit more subtle, like placing their pawns in place rather than directing key figures. Because, you know, shit hits the fan pretty quickly. The Anarchs survived mostly unscathed, mostly due to their retreat into the combat zone 6 years earlier. So, going back to what I said a moment ago, if you are an Anarch playing this, which seems to be like the main focus here, you're going to be in the combat zone for quite a bit, so that's going to make hunkering down in a haven, or the lack of thereof, extremely difficult. So for the bit of this read-up, I'm actually going to conclude by reading the current state of affairs, and then we're going to have a look at some of these NPCs and have a look how they're presented and whatnot. The current state of affairs: the Venture and the Giovanni maintained their own competition on the megacorp front, although they have been fighting a secret war for several years now. This condition could easily devolve into open warfare, devastating Night City. The Anox maintain their control of the combat zone. Control is a very interesting word here. Although this is contested more by the Mortal Gains more than other clans, most of whom have no interest in such a hellhole. The Mortal Society is a powder keg. The homeless and disenfranchised continually suffer abuse and neglect from the government and the megacorps. So kind of what I expected, like, same vampire controlling shit, fighting with the mortals, but with just a little sensitive powder keg sort of situation here. And we're just going to move forward a bit now and talking a bit about some of the kindred. Not too much though, because I want some information for you to have a little ponder on. We have the Carlo Giovanni, who is this disgruntled looking person here. If you've read any Vampire the Masquerade Sourcebook before, you'll recognise how a lot of this set out. It's not like a full-blown character sheet like it did with first edition. Second edition onwards started presenting them in like this list sort of thing. So if we have a look at Carlo, we've got the clan, the sire, the nature and demeanour, his generation, his embrace, age, and all the various different bits and pieces. How the blood points, willpower. Interesting that we've got someone with willpower of 9. Humanity 5, I would have thought that would have been a bit lower. And second and revised edition had role-playing hints, which I thought was always very useful. So role-playing hints, always be personable even with those who you dislike. It's easier to work with a possible friend than a potential enemy, even if you're not the one who is considering the friendship. You've got the haven, you've got the influence. Talks, the thing over the clan, it expands a bit more. It would have been interesting to see if it did what Chicago by Night did, where, I don't know if Chicago by Night 2nd edition came out before this, but 1st edition was certainly around, where it had like the secrets and the influence bit, like an A to Z sort of thing, or A to F as I think it uses, just so they know how much of Night City they are aware and control of. Because if they're having this thing where the Giovanni and the Vengeful are the ones that have everything wrapped around their finger, so to speak, it would have been interesting to see, like, on a scale, like, how much they actually know. But the fact that you've got, like, the influence written here, Carl effectively controls through the clan, Euro business machines, Petrochem, and the World News Services in Night City. 2 of them were among the first to pour money into Richard Knight's coffers. Okay, so it mentions those very heavy hitters in Night City, particularly Petrochem, rather, and the World's News Service. Like, again, I find that a bit irritating that they're the ones that like put in the strings, as it were, the much bigger things. Because it doesn't have to be a vampire is ruling every single asset and facet, I guess. But, it'd be nice just to have that little thing there so you don't have to read up everything. You can just see, like, A and then the expanded things if need be. We've got this clown here from the Bozos, which are actually one of my favourite gangs in Night City. They appear as clowns. And they have, like, surgery done to make them look themselves as such, including their feet, so they're big, long, red clown shoes sort of thing, but they're not actual shoes. Chucko, as his friends called him, was a bozo on the edge. He joined the game because he liked playing practical jokes, even if a few of his jokes were even more than a little sadistic. He never seriously hurt anyone, however. This would probably have lasted until he died or left the game, save for the fact that one of his better jokes gained the attention of Danny Covington. Danny was a Malkavian. Of course, the crazy clown was a crazy Malkavian who saw a psychotic soul waiting to bloom, and he was just the cook to water it. It's kind of what I was expecting, to be honest. Like 11th generation. Obviously, the stats and whatnot are different because you've got, like, again, with a younger kindred. We've got some stats with the Giovanni, which is 6th, interestingly enough. And I'm not going to go through all of them because you can just search them up in your own time. I love some of these artworks. So you've got this individual here who's Shark, if I'm marrying that up correctly. Some of these ads here as well. Like, the attention to detail, it feels like a Vampire the Masquerade product for sure. But it looks different enough to stand out. Because obviously you've got, like, the very anarchy sort of, like cyberware things. Yeah, so I do wish this was a bit longer, unfortunately. But this is what we get. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and whatever time zone it is, wherever you in the world, it is your Lauren Xavier, with the final part of the exploration of the world of future darkness. And if this is your first foray into this, allow me to give you a very brief breakdown on what it is. In the late 1990s, there was the White Wolf magazine that had many, many issues. Issues 36 to 38 had an interesting little tidbit known as the World of Future Darkness, where it took some of the themes and ideas of Cyberpunk 2020, the classic role-playing game of the dark future, that sexy bitch right there, and shoehorned in elements of Vampire the Masquerade into it, and given the year that this specific issue was released, this would have been Vampire the Masquerade 2nd edition. However, I do not possess Vampire the Masquerade 2nd edition, but I do have its much younger and more popular cousin, Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition, which is important because we're going to be doing some combat today using this edition. Lovely stuff. Now, how exactly are we going to be doing this? So, if we come over to the PDF screen that I've prepared for you, like a fucking episode of Blue Peter, you can see that we have the very first issue that included the Cyberpunk or Cybervamp or Cyberfang material. Cybervamp is the superior name that I conjured up. This and the other page has like all the tidbits like for cyberware and gear and whatnot, and how to incorporate that into Vampire the Masquerade, which I'm going to be referring to, but you're not going to see it all that much. But the other interesting thing is, well, to me at least, I have designed a character with my partner, which we did a few weeks ago. It was a lovely use of our date night, I'm not going to lie. And what we decided together with various dice rolls and whatnot is conjured up a Malkavian belonging to the Anarchs, whose name is Cobweb, that uses it and its pronouns. If you don't like the mentioning of pronouns or it gives you the heebie-jeebies, fuck off, mate, you're not wanted. And they are a net-running weapon tinkerer. And here are the stats. You've got some disciplines here down on the side. I put in Fortitude because I had some points to spend during the experience, spending point at the end of the character creation, and I had the idea that being somewhat of a devious netrunner, that it would reflect within the Curse of Cain, the vampiric side of things, of an increased fortitude of the mind, so to speak, and that would probably how it manifests itself. This other traits thing down here has got like other weapons and things, got the little gear things and whatnot, and a number of eddies, Eurobucks, whatever, little tidbits that I can refer to from the book itself. And we also have the humanity. Now, you may notice that the virtues don't quite add up to 6. Knowing how character creation works in the 20th Anniversary Edition, if you don't know what I'm talking about and want to learn, there's a card that's going to pop up there right now. And the way that works is that there's a certain little equation and dice rolls that you have to do to work out how much humanity you lose, and because of the different things we have installed, we lost a dot of humanity, which is rather unfortunate, but in the same time, it makes a lot of sense. So you might be wondering at this point how exactly this is all going to work, because I could just show you this screen as I play out this bit of combat. I even have some physical dice prepared, and that one's gone on the fucking floor. Fantastic. I could just show you this screen, but I don't think that's particularly engaging. Now, it might be to you, which is fantastic, but I think we need a bit more excitement to this. So, using Canva, which is what I use to make my thumbnails and on occasion some videos, I have prepared a little setup for you. I've uploaded one of the data pack things from Cyberpunk RED that has a load of maps. You can check that out and a link in the description below. You get that using that specific link. I get some of the money back to help support the channel so I can do more adventurous things like this. What we have here is a little setup that I have envisioned. It's nothing particularly fantastic. Over here, with this particular vampire with a portrait by the artist Mark Kelly, who's done a lot of artwork with Vampire the Masquerade, this is going to be our Malkavian. Now, they are trying to retrieve some information from this terminal here, but Cobweb here is unaware that Mrs. C. Lit is still working, and that she is guarded by 2 security guards. Now, Cobweb does not know anything else regarding this place, and that's where the rest of this solo stuff's going to come in. I'm going to be using a handy little book called Mythic GM Emulator, 2nd edition, written by Tanner Pigeon, a friend of the channel, where basically you can take any role-playing game and play it by yourself. It was actually this that inspired me to write my own homebrew for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, the Autarchus Storyteller, which is similar but very different. Check that out in the description below. You can purchase it on the Storyteller's Vault. But rather than have too many PDFs open all at once and just waste my time doing all of that, I'm just going to be wasting my time flicking through a few pages of this gorgeous hardback. Lovely stuff. As for the scenario here, as I said, we are in this building. We are trying to find out some interesting information. What that information is, I don't know. We'll ascertain that nearer the time. So Cobweb is going to naturally explore, he says, gesturing at the screen where you can't see me pointing. He's going to naturally explore some of the rooms here. It is going to explore some of the rooms here. So we're going to move cobweb there, because this looks like an important office thing. Now, just to very understand how this works, there's a whole table here that you can use with Mythic. It's called a fate chart, and there's a whole complicated one that uses like percentile things and whatnot, but we're not going to do that. We are going to be using the simplified version, and for that I'm going to be using a red die and a blue die to simulate the different numbers so I can easily see, and because counting and maths is not my strong point despite being autistic. I'm a disgrace to my people. So what we're going to do are deciding the odds of seeing if this door is locked. So the chaos factor, which is a mythic thing, I cannot be bothered to explain that right now. At the beginning of the first scene, it's at 5. Right, and when it moves on to the next scene, that may go up and down, but there is not going to be another scene. This is going to be the scene. So that's going to be stuck at 5, so there's going to be no modifier on that front. Is this door likely to be locked? I think it is very likely, given the fact this is after hours at night. So I come down to here with roll modifier, very likely +2 to whatever I roll here. Okay, so I've got a 6 and a 4, that makes 10. +2 is 12. Then we come over to the fate check answers. 11 or more means yes. So this door here, right in front of us, is locked, which we can also ascertain that there isn't anybody else inside. So what happens here is that Cobweb is like it's filling, like pushing on buttons and whatnot, or seeing if there's like a lock thing and finds that the thing is locked. So what they're going to do now is they're going to attempt to open the door. And in order to do this, we come over to my character sheet here, which I have a physical version printed out here. Lovely stuff. And that requires a dexterity and larceny, for which I do not have any dots in, which is going to be very interesting. But in my dexterity, I have a specialty in precise fingering, which can be used in many different ways. So what this means is that I have 4 dots in dexterity. So I have a dice put of 4. But I add a other die because I have a specialty in it. However, because this is a skill that I do not have any dots in, I add a difficulty of 1. So whether this be a standard difficulty of 6, I'm now looking for a standard difficulty of 7. So on my D10, I need 7 and higher to crack the lock. So exciting roll, first roll of the session, and I'm actually going to fiddle this around just like so. So the dice tray's a bit closer for this intense rolling. Okay, so I've got a 5, a 5, a 5, a 3, and a 0. The 0 so being a 10. I don't know why I said that, but there you go. So that was not a particularly fantastic roll. But as we got a success, it does mean that it happens. However, I think that what this means is that it takes quite a while, and Cobweb is being quite noisy with it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that one of these guards here doesn't hear what's going on. So I'm actually going to use another mythic roll to ascertain this. Do they hear this? It's possible. What do we have here? It's a 50-50, so they either do or they don't. There isn't like a possible variant here, so 50-50, there's no modifiers across this, so I just roll the numbers and add them together and see what happens. Okay, so 2 9s, so that's 18. We come over to the fetch check answers. So an 18 to 20 is an exceptional yes, which means not only did they hear it, but they are on alert, which is a fucking fantastic start. So what this is, they are gonna, this guard here is gonna shout out someone along the line and say, "Oi, who's there?" Which is going to alert Cobweb. Now, Cobweb, who has managed to get to the door, is going to quickly step inside as Guardface McGee is going to be making their way down here. Now, what Cobweb is going to do, aware that there's now people looking for them, we're going to employ a vampiric discipline. Specifically, Obfuscate, which is sort of an invisibility, but not really. What Obfuscate is, it's to cloak one from the mind's eye, so it's forcing the mind of the weak-willed, so to speak, to forget that they're there, sort of thing, which I think anybody who was somewhat of a recluse or a loner during their formative years would really appreciate it. It has 2 dots in Obfuscate, and I'm going to activate Unseen Presence, which doesn't require any roll. Does it require any blood point expenditure? It does not. Okay, which also reminds me, I haven't ascertained how many blood points that they have, because the 13th generations can have a maximum of 10, but we simply decide this by rolling a d10. And they do not have, they have a dot in domain, so they add, I think they add an additional dot. I don't remember. Let's just say, let's just to quickly go through this, that plus 1. It's not how it works, but fuck it. I can't be asked to check the book. 3. So they have 4 dots, which is fantastic. Some sexy points right there, and some sexy paper rustling. So Guardface McGee is walking down through here and is going to go into the door there. Now, other Guardface here is going to be like move in front of the door here. Now, the question is, I don't think Cobweb is going to quickly lock the door behind them, because that's going to break their obfuscation. So they are just going to, quite the nervous individual, I say, given the little courage that they have, they are just going to move over there. Now, this will allow Godface McGee to step into the room, and is obviously aware because this door was locked. Now, I'm going to quickly check on my PDF here of the Cybervamp thing to see how Obfuscate will work here, because they may have some sort of like a module in their eye that will allow them to see them. Actually, come to think about it, cameras and whatnot are usually could see through Obfuscate, which isn't mentioned here, and it's a 5th edition thing at least. Skim through it here, it doesn't appear so, but I think, well, let's do a roll for it. Let's actually decide to see how useful that would be. Can this tech see through? I think it's very likely. So you'll find with solo role-playing that a lot of your gaming will actually involve setting the scene, so to speak, because you have to simulate the role of GM and player here, which I enjoy quite a bit, and as a result I do it quite a lot. So I think it is very likely that this, the tech, whatever cyber fiending they have in their eye, will penetrate through Obfuscate. So I'll say it is very likely, which has a +2 modifier. Chaos factor is 5, so there's no additional one there, so just +2 to what we roll here. So that's 2 4s and 8, which is a 10. So 10 or less is no, which is very interesting. So in our world of cyberpunk, or the world of future darkness, I should say, whatever fancy tech shit they got going on their eyes cannot see them. So as this is happening, Techface McGee is like standing in the middle of the room, like probably at one point looking right at Cobweb, scanning the room, like having a little patrol around the room, like so. Maybe like poking their head through that door to make sure that nobody's hiding in there, and they will probably leave. Now Cobweb has an opportunity. Cobweb, I think, if feeling ambitious, will want to try and go up to them and take them out really quickly. It will minimise some like the head-to-head combat later on, which I feel requires some sort of dexterity and stealth roll. Because sure, they may be able to get up them behind them, but when they deploy their cyberware, their wolvers, which as the name would imply, like Wolverine claws, they don't have like additional arms or whatnot, they just go straight into the bone sort of thing. That is obvious, I feel, will break their obfuscation, so I'm going to do a dexterity plus stealth roll. Now, my precise fingering specialty does not apply here, so dexterity, I have 4 dots, stealth, I have 1 dot, and I'm going to say this is going to be a difficulty of 4, just because of the very nature of this. Actually, no, I'm going to make it 5. 1 less, because the guard here is alert, but because they can't see them, it's the awareness of the vampire in the room has been dropped somewhat. So that's 5 dice here, difficulty of 5. So I'm looking for results of 5 and higher. Okay, you've got 2 8 to 7 9. Oh, okay, so that's 5 successes. So that does it really well. So what's going to happen here? Cobweb has very successfully snuck up behind them, like so, has deployed their wolvers, and I think they're just going to go right in the neck there. Now, I should roll for damage here, and I think just to demonstrate this point here, me as a storyteller, if that had happened in-game, I wouldn't get the player to roll for damage, but just to show how this works here, I think we should. So, looking at the cyberware thing on the homebrew, the wolvers do damage is strength plus 3. So what that means is, if I go back to Canva, they have 2 dots in strength, so 2 dice, plus 3 for the wolvers. So we're looking for 6 and higher. Botches and particular critical failures, as it were, do not apply here. So 6 and up is basically, well, let's see. Holy shit, that's another 5 damage. Just a load of 7s and a couple of 6s. So that is 5 points of superficial damage. Now, if this was a vampire, they could soak this with their supernatural blood. But A mortal cannot. And as this is in the neck, I don't think there's going to be like anything protecting them there, so to speak. I mean, if we use the portrait here as a literal example, there is not much protecting them here. So this would take them down to crippled if we use like the health system thing here. But as you've got blades in the neck, which is obviously going to break obfuscation for Cobweb here, this is going to outright kill them. So we have eliminated this guard right here, and I'm actually, just to make things a bit easier for myself, they're just going to disappear like that. Lovely stuff. Now, Cobweb is probably going to like try and go through their belongings to see if there's anything they can find. Now, this guard might have like a guard key sort of thing, so they can access different buildings, which would part of the building, which might make it easier to come through here. Or it might also belong to this one. Could be like a rank sort of thing. Who knows? Let's decide that. Do I think it's likely? I think it's very likely that they would have such a pass, because they're protecting, which I'm presuming is like a manager or the CEO of this company. So I think if they are on guard duty, standing outside of their room, I'd actually say that is nearly certain. So I'm going to roll these 2 dice again, and nearly certain means that we add 4 to this roll. 12 plus 4 is 16. 11 or more is a yes. So this individual does have like a pass sort of thing. Cobweb picks it up, probably expects it inquisitively, like puts it on their person, and I imagine the guard had a rifle on them as well, so they're now going to claim that rifle for themselves, which is going to make the combat a lot easier later on, which I think is going to be coming up right now. Question is, did this guard hear them be killed, like making sort of unpleasant sort of sort of noises? I think it's unlikely, to be honest, but it is possible. I say it's unlikely rather than very unlikely. So what this means is we have a negative modifier. Unlikely is a -1. Chaos factor is at 5, so we do not have any additional ones after that. So roll the 2d10. Oh, fuck me. I rolled 2 10s. What a time to get the double 10s here. Take 2 is 18, so it was an exceptional yes. So not only did they hear them, they probably saw it as well. Maybe like this being like, these are obviously toilets, but this door probably has like a window over there, and they probably saw that over the desks or whatever, or some bollocks like that, or they hit the ground like really. So this guard has now seen Cobweb. But Cobweb probably hasn't seen them, so the guard here is going to use their thing to get through into the door and probably start opening fire. And we're going to initiate combat. So the initiative rating is the dexterity plus the wit, plus whatever you roll on the d10. So what that means is, with Cobweb, their dexterity is 4, wits is 5, which in total makes 5. 4 plus 1 is 5. So I then roll a d10 and then add that to whatever the initiative rating is. So I rolled a 10. So their initiative modifier is 15. And I'm going to roll for the guard, who, for all this combat and stuff, I have 5 dice for them, because you really don't need much here, and it doesn't really matter. So they rolled a 2, so 7. So despite, like, initially having the edge on them, they run in and they probably, like, forget all protocols, like, freeze, motherfucker! Like, or something like that, and, like, holds up their weapon. But this gives Cobweb here a chance to act. Now, they can't use Obfuscate to hide away from this. They have to act here. And I think what we're going to do here with Cobweb, it's going to be a very bit of short combat, admittedly, apparently, because I'm going to use Dominate, which, as the name would imply, it is a power that allows one to dominate the weak-willed. Now, Dominate does have a feature here with the Cyberpunk stuff. I saw it mentioned somewhere, and it mentioned in the beginning of the write-up for the first magazine here. Okay, so chips and whatnot, it doesn't affect its actual brain memory, as it were. So coming back to Canva, where I can operate the little tokens I have made, so to speak, Cobweb is going to just shout a one-word command, because they've only got 1 dot and it's called command, and says stop. And that's what's going to happen here. Now, in 5th edition, you don't need to make a roll for mortals, but there isn't such a thing here. So there is going to be a roll of manipulation plus intimidation here to get them to drop their weapon against their willpower. And as I said, the individual... We haven't got a character sheet for the goon here, or the guard, I should say. And I honestly think that their willpower is going to be a bit more if they're like some important security that's protecting Miss C. Lit. So I'm actually going to say their willpower is 7 for the duration of this. I may forget this, but for the time being, it's a willpower 7. So it's a what did I say it was? It was a manipulation and intimidation roll for Cobweb here. So manipulation is 4 again. We're on in a lot of 4 things here. And intimidation, what does they have? Nothing. There isn't a difficulty modifier here. It's just I roll these 4 dice. Difficulty 7. 3 successes, which is like the standard sort of like number that you need to hit with V20. So it happens. So the guard has now stopped, but hasn't stopped them from shooting, which I think is what the individual is going to do now. So they've stopped, yes, but they're going to shoot because there wasn't that like request here. Because, you know, Dominate works very literally. So this guard is going to open fire them. So what's going to happen now is that with my 5 dice for the guard here, I'm going to roll these d10s. And it's going to be what's known as a contested roll. Because obviously, Cobweb would like to not get shot at. So it's going to be the 5 dice I've collected for the guard against Cobweb's dexterity and athletics, which again I have no dots for. I built this character poorly for physical combat, but the thing is with V20 and games like this where story comes first, you build the person, you don't build them up for combat. I didn't want to build them up for combat anyway, because it would make it a bit more interesting. So with the guard we have 2 successes. Actually, there's a 1 here, and 1s in V20 remove one of those successes, so I'm going to remove the 9 just because it's the lowest. You don't have to do it like that. So there is 1 success, and that's on the 10. So, now with the Dex and Athletics, the 4 for Cobweb, because remember they've got no Athletics, so I need to beat 1 success, which is doable, I think. Okay, so similar sort of outcome. 2 successes, but I've got a 1, so that takes away one of the successes, and I'm leaving the 10, so it's a tie. I knew I should have spent a point in willpower here. I was like, no, I won't need it. It's like 1 success, you can beat that. No, so in the case of a tie, it goes to the active participant. So yes, they are able to get round the corner, but they have been shot first. I say this is an automatic fire weapon. Okay, so should have increased the difficulty by 2 there, but whatever. Damage indicates the damage dice pool against mortals. Firearms are considered lethal damage, versus vampires are considered bashing damage unless head is targeted. So it's not. So what this all means is that the damage pool is 7 dice. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, so it's like a flat 7 dice. You don't add any attributes to it. That's how I'm interpreting the rules here. So I'm going to be rolling here for damage. We're looking for 6 and higher. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 successes, bashing damage, which is fantastic. Now, it's not over yet, because remember, I said vampires could soak damage, and they are going to attempt to do this now with their stamina. But they also have fortitude, so they can add that dice to it as well. So, Cobweb has 2 dice in stamina, for stamina, and 1 for fortitude, so 3 successes is what I'm hopefully looking for to take that down by half. So 6 and higher to soak damage. And yes, I got 3 successes. So we are 1, 2, 3. So I've marked that down on the health character sheet. That was their turn. We're now back to Cobweb. Now what on earth is Cobweb going to do? Because eye contact is probably being broken now, so they're going to, in their next turn, they are going to probably move around and catch up with Cobweb here as this gunshot's going on. And I think we can assume that they can hear this. Actually, can they hear this? You know what? I think, because this is an important target, an important room, I reckon that this is like soundproofed or whatever, or reinforced or whatever, so nobody can like just pop a shot through the door or whatever. So, going back to Mythic, I actually think that is highly unlikely that they can hear this for their like own protection sort of thing. So yeah, very unlikely. So negative modifier for that of 2. 7 and 9 is 16. I can't do math. Take 2 is 14. 10, 11 or more. Yes. Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, so before we move back to Cobweb, they're going to put them in the initiative now. They're just going to be right at the bottom. They heard that gunshot happening. Is there like an alarm thing to call for reinforcements? I'd say that it's unfortunately likely that that's the case, like pushing a button under the desk sort of thing, like to call for backup. So yeah, let's roll that. +1. Oh, 2 1s. So 2 1s. So +1 is 3. 2 to 4. And hold on a moment. 2 1's an exception, no, because it's double digits on Mythic. It's a random event. I need to roll a D100 on the random event focus table. So basically, that's why I've got the 2 different colours here. I'm going to say that the blues are 10s. So, 2. A result of 2. A remote event. Well, this makes sense. This is somewhat remote and detached. So they hear the gunshot. They're probably on there's probably a phone conversation or like a business meeting or whatever. And they're talking about some sort of information, like money exchange or whatever. You know, something, serious of that nature. Let's actually make a roll here on the meaning tables, descriptors 1 and 2, to generate a 2-word prompt. Again, blues are going to be 10s. 32. Where is that? Fearfully... 99. Fearfully weak. Okay, so... I reckon that this individual is not as powerful as they've been made. I've just deluded them to be, that they've been on a conversation with their boss, which is much higher up. Maybe it's to do with Arasaka or something, to really cement it as Cyberpunk, or they've gone bankrupt or something like that. Or maybe it's their father or so. Actually, I like that idea. It's a conversation with their father, like investing money into the company or whatever. They feel really weak and they have to go and like stand up for themselves, like to prove their honor or whatever, rather than just hiding behind a desk all the time. So I think as that happens, they hear the gunshot and they're kind of coerced or forced to take action. So the next turn, when I get round to doing them, they are probably going to get out of their office and like prove their father wrong, sort of thing. So yeah, that's how I'm interpreting that here, and that's gotten very spicy very quickly. See, I just love the chaos that these tables can bring. So we're back to my go, and we suffered just a few wounds, damage, the bashing damage, which doesn't have any negative modifiers for us yet. It's only when it gets to superficial and we need to start to be a bit concerned about it. But Cobweb, with a single word, I'm trying to think what they can do here. I think at this point they're just going to have to try and rush up to the guard and just shank him with the Wolvers, which I think is what they're going to do. But they need to... Well, they can reach the distance for sure. But yeah, they need to run there. They've deployed the Wolvers. Rather than using the gun, which would be the sensible thing for them to do, it worked with the person that's there, so it's going to work with them here, right? Famous last words. So in order to do that, dexterity and... Oh, that's a good question. Dex and melee, as this is a weapon of sorts. So what we have here are 5 dice again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 for both of them, because as I said, we're just using a generic pool of 5 for this guard. Yeah, so standard difficulty is 6. The contested roll. 1, 2, 3, 4 successes. Okay. 4 and 2. Okay. Oh, actually that becomes 1 because one of those is a 1. So actually, hold on. I miscounted. Okay, so they actually have no successes. So good for me. So again, it was strength +3 to deploy the Wolvers, and I think they're just going to like try and get him in the chest sort of thing. Now it's quite likely this individual is wearing some form of armor to protect themselves. Not much, I would have thought, because they would need some mobility. So what would this be? I'd say this would be a Kevlar vest of some description, which I'm probably going to regret very fucking quickly. And now that should have a penalty of 1 for their dexterity, which I'll try and remember for next time. So what this means is that it has an armor rating of 3. So I basically have... That rating of 3 is going to stop anything beyond... let 3 or less, basically. So in order to do this, I need a strength of 2 plus 3, because that's what we said. They are, so 5 dice again, to see if I can cause damage. Damn. It's a load of 10s. Unfortunately, that doesn't do the crit. Actually, 10s do crit here. I'm saying they're crit here. So, 4, 5, 6. That is 6 successes. So individual number 2, guard face, takes 3 points of superficial damage, and I'm just marking that here. 1, 2, 3. So they're now injured, I would say. So they have a -1 to mobility on top of the 1 from their movements. They actually have a -2. Cobweb has rushed over here, and I'm just going to put them on top here like so it's a bit easier to see. Also to simulate that they're on top of the guard, like sort of like pounced on them and like pushed them down with the thing. They've probably dropped their weapon and it's gone somewhere, and the guard is going to try and, you know, push them off. So this is probably going to be a strength and brawl. So this would be 5 dice for them, but with the -2 different modifiers, as we said, that they're actually going to be rolling 3 dice. And in retaliation, this is going to be a strength and brawl or back, I would say. So 3 dice for the guard, 2 successes. Okay, so 5 successes. 5 dice for Cobweb here. So 1, 2. Oh no, that's 3 dice as well. Oh, fuck me sideways. I'm going to spend a willpower point, which means I'm going to get a automatic success that cannot be removed by ones. So at the very least, I will have 1 success. So they had 1 success, so I've got to beat that, otherwise it's going to be a tie. 2 successes. Actually, no, 1 success, because there was a 1 that removed a success, but the automatic success from the willpower plus the success here is the 2 dice. So they're able to keep pinned down on them some more. So unfortunately, they are not successful in removing that. I imagine Miss C. Lit here, in her turn, she's not going to be able to get to all of that in her turn because like movement speed or whatever. I'm not being exact with it, but I'm just trying to think what's logical, because she's going to very cautiously like get to her office door. She takes like a big breath, steps outside, and I think realistically that is where she's going to end up for her turn. Yeah, and I think in the next turn she'll probably like try and shoot through the door, because I imagine she's got like a pistol or whatever on her person that could sort all this out. Or we can design some cyberware for her later on, because she looks quite an expensive individual here. So we are down to back to Cobweb right at the top, and I think what's going to happen here is that Cobweb is, again, with their wolvers plunged into their chest. They're going to retract one of them, and they're just going to punch them straight in the face. And there's a chance here that they could dodge this. So how I'm going to like move their head out of the way sort of thing. And so what's going to happen here, that again, the guard's going to have 3 dice. But I'm going to make this a difficulty of 7 just because of their being the fact they're injured, they're pinned down, they can't really move all that well. You know, realistically, you can't move your head that far out of the way from all of that. So they're going to be rolling at difficulty 7 with their 3 dice. They got 2 successes, of course they did. So with the 3 dice with Cobweb, I'm going to take my chance with this. I'm not going to spend a point of willpower for this because they still got that in their chest. They're not going anywhere. Okay, what do we have? Ooh, we have a critical success. Fucking fantastic. We have the 2 10s, which is 4, and a 3. So yeah, that's 4 successes. So, like, got them in the fucking face. And I've realised I've just been calculating damage wrong, so I should have added my additional successes to that. So what I mean by this is, so you only need the 1 success in this case. So there's 3 left over. So 3 plus the strength, which is 2. Plus the 3 dice for the wolvers, so that actually has a pool of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like so. And I know there's going to be at least one person who's going to correct me in the comments below, because I'm doing this all on the fly. I haven't really planned everything, and there's a dice down. Can I see if I can grab it with my feet? No, I can't. So banging down we go. So yeah, I don't really care. Like, it's more for the feel and the vibe of everything else, to be fair. So let's roll all these dice, 6 and above. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's another 5. Yeah, they're dead. Yeah, because they start gaining aggravated damage and they're just fucked. Also through the fucking face, like they're dead. Like, it's very successfully through the fucking face like that, and they just sort of begin to splurge out. Which takes us to you. There's probably a yell of some description, and we've ascertained that these walls are particularly thin, or their hearing's particularly good, or maybe this person who was able to hear things a bit better with some sort of cyberware. So they are now going to... They've yelled, highlighting that to Cobweb that they're there, and they're just going to take a shot with a pistol. And because this individual, I'd say, is a little weaker than the guards, I'm actually going to give them a dice put of 3. Because they don't look like a fighter. Like, I don't think this person's fought a day in their life, sort of thing. So, dex and firearms. Well, 3 dice, doesn't really matter. Don't have a character sheet for them. 2 successes, and that's going to be... Actually... No, I'm not going to roll with Cobweb, because they're sort of on top of a person. That, yeah, I'm not going to make them roll for that. So, if we have a look at the pistol, that does damage. We need 4, a thing of 4. So, 6 and above, plus 5, plus the 1, because the 1 carried over with a success. What is that? It's a 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh. That's 4 bashing damage. So, just tallying that up. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if they take any more damage, it's not going to go over into superficial. But that doesn't really do stop Cobweb, which will probably spook them a little bit. But yeah, that takes us back to Cobweb. I will say, you know, they shot through the door. It's probably glass because, of course, it's cyberpunk. Cobweb, you know, sort of like pull the claws out, stands up, stop. Again, this is a... dominate command, so it's going to be manipulation, intimidation. There's no intimidation, just manipulation. So 4 dice here against their willpower, and I'm actually going to say their willpower is going to be 4, as we've ascertained they're quite cowardly. They don't, you know, they can go through with certain things, but regarding humans, they don't actually have a lot here. Mortals in Vampire the Masquerade tend to have like a willpower of 3 to 5 anyway. The guards are an exceptional example because of, you know, the prestigious nature of what they're doing. So I'm going to say the difficulty I'm looking for is 4 or higher, which is quite easy to beat. Yeah, so that's 2 successes. So actually, no, that's 1 success, because one of them's a 1, so I miscounted. So that takes the success away, so that's 1 success, but that's all that's needed. Cobweb is now walking through here. You know, maybe there's bits of the door left, and they walk through. There's going to be some sort of conversation now, like obtaining money, information, like who do you work for, sort of thing. They're probably going to find out that in actual fact they're not particularly as well off, but it does give Cobweb an interesting avenue into this company, whatever this company may be, and I think Cobweb will spare them providing this sort of exchange of service or whatever. And the way that the vampire will do that, they'll slit their wrist, give them some of their blood, and we now have C lit as a ghoul. So that really is a short summary of the combat. First of all, with Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition, but with a cyberpunk twist. Not much, admittedly, because, you know, things turned out to go very well in our favour, which I'm very grateful for. But, you know, there is a lot that you can do there. And as I'm doing all of this on the fly with no preparation whatsoever, as I said, you know, with Mythic here, stopping to search up the rules and things and whatnot, it's all very chaotic, and a lot with the solo stuff, you can't really focus too much on the details. You know, you have to like go with your gut and roll with it, and I got rules wrong, so it doesn't really matter, but you get a general feel about the combat in Cybervamp, the world of future darkness. And I would love to see and hear more of your stories about how you've integrated cyberpunk themes and whatnot into your games of World of Darkness, or vice versa, depending on your mood and outlook on life. Let me know in the comments below about all those different things. Have you enjoyed this series as we reached the very end of it now? What's been your favourite bit? And have you purchased these magazines since we started? And if you again are unaware, I've left the magazines that all of this is included in the description below for you to purchase. And if you purchase with those links, I get some of the money back because I'm an affiliate on DriveThruRPG and by extension the Storyteller's Vault, which allows me to do more content like this and provide more interesting changes to the usual stuff I want to do, because I want to branch out a bit more, and you know, I want to cover more lore stuff and more lore dives, and those books aren't fucking cheap. So all the help you can give me is greatly appreciated. But if you like this, like, subscribe, and share with your friends or anybody that is somewhat interested in the world of future darkness. And the next time you hear somebody talk about this, you can show them these videos, and hopefully that will open their eyes and ears and their mind's eye to the glorious dankness that is the world of future darkness. And until next time, Chumbers, farewell.